Some of the most oppressive rulers of earlier times who killed some of the best men of their time unjustly would never tolerate when a foreign kafir would transgress in any way on any Muslim wherever she may be. What's most amazing about Bilad al-Hind and Sind, where they're forcing our sisters to take off the hijab to go to school, that it was the shout of one Muslim orphan woman, or actually one Muslim orphan girl, that caused Muslims to conquer Sind and al-Hind, reaching to today's Pakistan and near India. A few orphan Muslim girls who were violated and kidnapped. But the slaves of the cows never stop or learn. It was during the time of Al-Hajjaj, and this is not a dispute of whether Al-Hajjaj is Muslim or not, or whether he repented from some matters or not, or if the allegations against him, some of the allegations against him were exaggerated or not, especially by the Rafidah, as they habitually do to people that they despise, and they strongly despised Al-Hajjaj. That's another topic that can be discussed independently. One thing is clear and definite. He was an oppressor in killing for dunya matters, and he unjustly killed some of the best people of his time. Sa'id ibn Jubayr, Abdullah ibn Safwan, Muhammad ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhum wa rahimahumullah jami'ah. He did all that, yeah, but when a foreigner transgressed in any way on any Muslimah, in his territory or outside his territory, in his boundaries or outside his boundaries, he deployed the armies and took down continents. He ordered the great conquest of Bilad al-Hind in Sind, the same region where they're now forcing a muhajjaba to take off her hijab to enter a school. Al-Hajjaj had some war scrimmages with a king called ℍ𝕚𝕟𝕕. Raja was the Hindu king of the western region of the Indian subcontinent. But even though ℍ𝕚𝕟𝕕 killed some of Al-Hajjaj's men and he caused them harm, Al-Hajjaj was not taking him as serious as when Muslim girls were apprehended in his territory. 88 years after the hijrah, the king of a peninsula called Yaqut. Yaqut is mentioned in the Quran describing al-Hur al-Ain. كَأَنَّهُنَّ الْيَاقُوتُ وَالْمَرْجَانِ. That island was called the island of Yaqut, which is rubies. And it was said that it was named that due to the beautiful faces of the women there. Abu al-Hasan al-Baladhiri said that the king of the island Yaqut, which is today called Sri Lanka, he heard some Muslim girls were orphaned when their father died and they had no caretaker, and they wanted to travel to Basra in Iraq to live under the rule of Al-Hajjaj. The king of Sri Lanka saw it was an opportunity to blandish up to Al-Hajjaj by sending him these orphans safely and to get on his good side. And on top of that, he sent some gifts along with the girls to Al-Hajjaj, and he sent them all on a ship. They knew how to get on his good side. You honor Muslim women. Send Muslim women unharmed. You don't transgress on them. On the way, pirates hijacked the ship, and word reached Al-Hajjaj. He wrote a letter to the king of Sind, ℍ𝕚𝕟𝕬, because they were in his jurisdiction, and he asked that they be freed immediately. The Afifat Muslimat must be freed immediately. The king wrote back apologizing, saying these were pirates and they're criminals and I have no control over them. The news then reached Al-Hajjaj that the women were actually captive in the jurisdiction and control of ℍ𝕚𝕟𝕬. That right there sparked a war that caused the entire conquest of Al-Hind and Sind. Al-Hajjaj, in honor of those girls, decided it was time to take the whole region. For a few orphan girls no one cares about? You, Al-Hajjaj, who killed the best of your men, are now going to practically take a continent over? Take a map and look where Al-Hajjaj is. And then look how far in Basra, in Iraq. And then look how far India and Pakistan are. And you'll see the value of the shout of a Muslim. Muhammad Iqbal said, كُنَّا جِبَالًا فوق الجبال وربما سرنا على موج البحار بحارا بمعابد الإفرنج كان آذاننا قبل الكتائب يفتح الأمصار. In the lands of the enemies, the echo of our adhan would conquer the lands before our troops. لم نخش طاغوتا يحاربنا ولو نصب المنايا حولنا أسوارا ندعو جهارا لا إله سوى الذي صنع الوجود وقدر الأقدار ورؤوسنا يا رب فوق أكفنا نرجو ثوابك مغنما وجوارا. We carried our heads on our hands, seeking nearness to Ya Allah and your reward. كنا نرى الأصنام من ذهب فنهدمها ونهدم فوقها الكفار لو كان غير المسلمين لحازها كنزا وصاغ الحلي والدينار. Invading another country for a few orphan women, ya Muslimin. It's been so long that it's hard to believe we ever lived those glorious days. It's been so long with these shuyukh calling for Jahannam, from the modernists and the murji'ah, raising a failure, surrenderous, defeated generation with their talks that we forgot this actually existed in our history, or that Muslims lived in honor. That shows you the difference between the tawaghit of today in men like Al-Hajjaj. Al-Hajjaj sent his cousin, the great general, Muhammad ibn al-Qasim al-Thaqafi, a teenager. He deployed him with an army of 20,000 soldiers, a navy fleet with catapults and the most advanced weaponry they had. Al-Hajjaj went to the extent of making sure the army was well equipped with every detail they needed, even vinegar in their food. He spent nearly 60 million dirham, 60,000 dirham, on the army for the shout of a woman, to show you how valuable that is. Armies took off to protect a single girl, a single woman's honor, to protect her modesty, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. Today their armies are busy guarding and protecting immodesty, or supporting nations who violated thousands upon thousands of our sisters. And then they have the audacity to say we're Salafi, or we're Salafi. We follow the teachings of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. Oh look, they're expanding the haram. أجعلتم سقاية الحج وعمارة المسجد الحرام كمن آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وجاهد في سبيل الله لا يستوون عند الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. You consider providing water to the Hujjaj and the maintenance of the Masjid al-Haram equal to those who believe in Allah, truly believe the Tawheed of Allah in the last day and strive and fight in the cause of Allah. They're not equal before Allah. Muhammad ibn al-Qasim al-Thaqafi headed to near what's today Karachi, conquering and moving forward, battle after battle. As soon as he conquered a town, the first thing he did was destroy the monuments and symbols of shirk and establish the Tawheed, build the masajid, until he finally reached the King Dahir in 92 or 93 after the Hijrah. He fought him, he defeated him, and the king was killed in that battle. Yeah, the first thing Muhammad ibn al-Qasim al-Thaqafi did was exactly what every conqueror before him did. Exactly what our teacher Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did when in the conquest of Mecca. Eliminate any public symbols of shirk. They didn't run to show the West how cute they were securing the symbols of shirk, or publicly protecting the filthiest mushrikeen, the Rafida and their shirk. Muhammad ibn al-Qasim continued with his conquest even further, reaching areas of what's today near Pakistan and the borders of India and Kashmir and the borders of China. Muhammad ibn al-Qasim remained in Bilad al-Sind, as it was referred to back then, and both Muslims and non-Muslims loved his rule. He was very gentle and wise in dealing with everybody under his rule, Muslims and non-Muslims. That's until governors changed in Iraq and he was summoned back to go to Iraq. Accepting the qadr of Allah and knowing what most likely would be his destiny, he went back. When he reached Iraq, Salih ibn Abd al-Rahman ordered that Muhammad ibn al-Qasim be placed in shackles and imprisoned. Salih ibn Abd al-Rahman's brother was previously killed by al-Hajjaj. And now it was an opportunity to get revenge by torturing and killing his cousin, Muhammad ibn al-Qasim. Muhammad ibn al-Qasim is the cousin of al-Hajjaj. One of the biggest legendary heroic conquerors of Islamic history, Muhammad ibn al-Qasim, gets shackled, imprisoned in the prison of Wasit, and he gets tortured to death, and he dies at the age of 24. عليك سلام الله وقفا فإنني رأيت الكريم الحر ليس له عمر. Short lives with great achievements is generally the path of the mighty magnanimous men of this ummah. Going back to our point, that entire region where they're now forcing hijab off our sisters was conquered because of a few orphan girls were transgressed on. This ummah was an ummah of izzah, the humility our sisters endure, and what the munafiqeen try to normalize is not the normal status of this ummah. Once upon a time, chivalry beat in the hearts of this ummah. And magnanimity flowed in the veins of our youth. And magnanimity flowed in the veins of our youth. That was when this ummah was living as it's supposed to, in grace, in dignity, in honor, something the kuffar unite to fight. That was the normal status of this ummah. The armies would be deployed and the lives of the believers would be cheapened for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to respond to the shout of a Muslim woman wherever it came from. The examples in history are numerous. From the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who deployed an army for one woman, and from the time of many of the khulafa after him. Hisham al-Rifa'i said, or actually Hashim al-Rifa'i said, وَكُنَّا حِينَ يَرْمِينَا أُنَاسٌ نُؤَدِّبُهُمْ أُبَاتًا قَادِرِينَ. When someone harmed us, we used to teach them an unforgettable lesson. وَكُنَّا حِينَ يَأْخُذُنَا وَلِيٌّ بِطُغْيَانٍ نَدُوسُ لَهُ الْجَبِينَ. And when a leader transgressed on us, we used to step on his forehead. Some leaders may have oppressed and killed their own for power or other worldly gains. But a foreign kafir's hand that transgressed on a Muslimah was to be severed immediately. Our problem is not only in India, Palestine, Burma, Kashmir, Iraq, and Syria. But I specifically mentioned India because it's a current matter and their matter is being neglected. It's heart-melting to see our sisters resigning from teaching positions to avoid taking off the hijab. And that's an obligation they must do. There's no choice in it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them better. Parents taking their children back home so they will not take off their hijab. Children returning home on their own because they refuse to take the hijab off. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honor them. Children outside in the open learning because they don't want to walk into the schools and take off their hijab. If the tawagheet don't want to be a hajjaj of our time, then I won't say it would take one taghut of them, but rather one normal, wealthy businessman could build and finance them more schools than that can encompass them, which would be a temporary fix. There's no worldly education worthy of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For those who sacrifice, rest assured, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never let something sacrificed for him go in vain. It will be replaced with something better without a doubt. That's our dhan in Allah. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. When the muhajirin left their beloved land of Mecca, their family, their wealth, their property, to protect their deen, they got a replacement they never imagined. In a short time, they became the leaders of the world. A slave of Allah knows there's no degree worthy of humiliating yourself to slaves of animals in disobedience of Allah. Growing up illiterate in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more noble, more blessed than a vanishing PhD dunya degree attained in disobedience to Allah. The most essential degree our sisters and daughters need over there is a degree in al-usul al-thalatha. The degree that will grant them ultimate success in the grave and in this dunya. With that degree, they will pass the test in the grave. And with that degree, they will raise a generation like Muhammad ibn al-Qasim to regain the lost honor of this ummah. Statues symbolizing freedom in the West are worthy of being no more than a urinary for their dogs. When Muslims imposed hijab on a 2-block area or a tiny little town they took control of, the non-stop, endless barking of their dogs never ceases. When Muslimat are denied their right to wear hijab, they're all silent. Only minds equivalent in intellect with the cattle they worship could rationalize how forcing masks on and hijabs off makes sense. Only minds equivalent with the cattle they worship single out and corner a sister and flex their muscles on her. That's just a glimpse of their incitement and hostility towards Muslims there. Khalid al-Rashid, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasten his release and ease his suffering, as I just heard subhanallah today, they resentenced him to 8 more years for a total of 23 years. Years and years ago, in a different context. He said, have the cow worshippers become more manlier or courageous than us? I ask you, what's become of this ummah where even hearts don't even feel pain for such sins and the eyes no longer tear? A model wears hijab in solidarity with our sisters in India, and those who have a covenant with Allah to speak are silent and mute. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect and honor and alleviate the suffering of our Muslim sisters and brothers in India and everywhere else in this globe, and bring about in this ummah men like Muhammad ibn al-Qasim to regain the lost honor of this ummah.